This is something that
A secret
for my whole life, really.
that haunted the Catholic Church for decades,
Every once in a while it would come up,
shrouded in shame.
and I think really what I'd do is I'd push it down.
A secret that sent us on a search for answers in the Arizona desert.
Hey there.
Hi, are you Neil?
Yeah.
I'm Kevin Vaughn from 9 News in Denver.
It just wasn't a Sunday type of deal. It really wasn't.
Growing up, the rhythm of the church was Michael Smilanic's life.
Like even being an altar boy,
The rituals.
I know we would goof off and everything,
Mass each morning before class.
but there was still a reverence that was a really big part of my being.
A reverence that extended to the men in collars and robes at Aurora's St. Therese Catholic Church.
They're people of God. They dress different. They did everything different. To me, growing up through that, you kind of in awe of that. You look up to them a lot.
In June 1965, a new priest arrived at St. Therese.
And he had a really nice car for a priest,
He had like a little Pontiac.
GTO.
Peter Coulter and Michael Smilanic didn't know each other, but they both knew Father Neil Hewitt, who was unlike any priest either had ever met.
And it was like, God, this guy is really cool.
He didn't seem as priestly as other priests.
He seemed more human.
Still in his 20s, a pilot and a skier, Hewitt had been ordained in 1962. St. Therese was his third assignment in the Archdiocese of Denver.
And so we went to the lake.
We stopped at a reservoir,
Michael and Peter had remarkably similar experiences.
and he says, let's go swimming.
And you could tell he was trying to get everybody to go skinny dipping.
And it's like, well, God, I don't have a swimming suit or anything. It's like, no, don't worry about it. We'll skinny dip.
Remarkably similar rides in that GTO.
I sat in the back seat.
And there were porn magazines on the floor.
He kind of like, here, you should read this.
This was an erotic book.
It was not something that, a 14-year-old kid should be reading.
They both say they were groomed with booze and other substances, but it's here that their stories diverge.
I don't think I was molested. I don't remember anything like that.
It's painful. I mean, I was really, it's tiring kind of reliving some of it.
What Michael says happened to him on a trip to Montreal in 1967 went beyond grooming.
And so Father Hewitt and I were in the same bed.
Michael struggles to find the words to describe what happened next.
Father Hewitt he made advances and did a bunch of made advances. As a kid, I didn't realize that I could have put my clothes on and ran down to the lobby.
Instead, Michael said nothing. Not to the two other boys on that trip who were asleep in a different bed, not to his family. Michael buried it for nearly half a century.
When you're a poor kid from a poor family, and when a priest pays attention to you, it's a big deal.
In 2015, Michael saw the movie Spotlight and realized
that very same experience that happened to these kids happened to me.
he was ready to share his secret.
It's hard to come forward. It's hard to come out and share. It's embarrassing.
Michael went to the Archdiocese of Denver, which commended his great courage to face the wounds of his past and offered to pay for a year of counseling. He also had a lot of questions for Neil Hewitt and started calling. One day, Hewitt answered.
I told him who I was. I asked him if he remembered me, and he did say, oh yeah. And I said, do you remember what you did to me? And he did. He admitted it right away.
But would he acknowledge the secret to us?
I wanted to come down and talk to you and give you the opportunity.
No, it's about my former life.
After discussing priest abuse investigations going on around the country, Hewitt offered an admission.
I have not done anything like that since, we were married in 1980. And a couple of years before that I had not done anything like that.
It sounds like you're admitting that you did those things.
Well, yeah, I did do things that were wrong. I realize that.
He repeatedly said he was sorry.
I talked to Michael. Anybody else I would be glad to talk to. And I would apologize. And that's, I don't know what else I can do.
Could you tell me how many boys there were? Do you know?
No.
Do you have an estimate?
Oh, maybe. My guess would be around 8, maybe 9.
In May 1991, a troubled man from Leadville picked up a pistol and ended his life.
You know, we don't have Stuart anymore.
As a child, Stuart Saki spent a lot of time with his cousin.
We did a lot of family things together. We were at their house a lot, little dinky, tiny house in town.
As an adult, he struggled with alcohol and thoughts of suicide.
He just seemed tormented. He'd lost, you know.
And then, years later,
And I found the letter.
the letter Donna Ballantyne uncovered was handwritten on 2 pages, undated, unsigned. It began, "Dear Neil."
And I saw Dear Neil, and I
Realized it was meant for Neil Hewitt, the priest who married her and her husband at Leadville's Church of the Annunciation, the priest who baptized 2 of her sons. The letter went on. "It's been 24 years since you sexually molested me." In graphic terms, it alleged the priest sexually assaulted Stuart 3 times when he was a teenager.
I have no doubt that he wrote that letter.
You have no doubt that what he said happened in the letter happened.
I have no doubt.
Can you address what Stuart Saki wrote?
On his porch in Arizona, Neil Hewitt acknowledged receiving and reading Stuart's words.
Was he telling the truth in that letter that he wrote?
Yeah. Pretty much.
There's a dark cloud over the Catholic Church.
Inside these walls at the Archdiocese of Denver, a former U.S. attorney is going through records on priest abuse back to 1950, a review launched by Colorado Attorney General Phil Weiser.
The Pennsylvania grand jury report stopped a lot of people, including me, in my tracks.
And now the spotlight is on Colorado.
And the plan is to name names?
Yes, the report that we issue will name names. It will detail where abuse happened, who is the abuser, and what the church did.
And is there a possibility of criminal charges, do you think?
If matters come forward that are appropriate for a referral to a district attorney and criminal investigations, that is going to be a part of this process.
We were looking for a way to do it right, to be transparent about it, to provide, some measure of justice for past victims.
Victims like Stuart Saki. His letter led to one of 2 complaints about Father Neil Hewitt's alleged conduct in the 1960s, both made long after he left the priesthood.
Can you tell me if there were other complaints about him specifically?
There was never any reports of misconduct with a child and no reports of sexual abuse of a minor while he was in ministry.
Even so, Hewitt's past is being investigated.
Any abuse that happens needs to be part of this inquiry. Whenever the church found out about it.
It's been nearly 40 years since Neil Hewitt's time in Leadville came to an end, and yet his former life still troubles him.
And at the time, I didn't think of it as being very wrong, I think, would be the best way to say it.
Did you come to think of it as wrong at some point?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I confessed these things to some priests, and they, it was just, say 3 Our Fathers and 3 Hail Marys and have a nice day type of thing.
Wow.
Michael Smolanek has also accused Hewitt of molesting him in the 1960s.
3 Our Fathers and 3 Hail Marys. When you're a kid and you say a cuss word and you go to the priest, that's what you get.
And now Michael watches as Hewitt reacts to his allegations.
I'm really sorry about that. I really am. I just...
You'd never believe how much he suffered.
And there's a lot of people that have suffered, not just him. It's hurtful that this doesn't really matter anymore.
His actions, what he did to Stuart as a child, it ruined him for life.
It'll matter to me for as long as I live.
To me, sorry's not enough.